This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I think we have a few students. I think we can start. So welcome everyone. Today we have Mr. Christopher Sargent, Assistant Professor in Property Law from Uni of Nottingham, to present on the topic, what is law and why study law. So yeah, let's welcome Mr. Christopher Sargent, everyone. Thank you, Christopher. You can take it away.
Okay, so thank you for having me, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on exactly where you are in the world. As you've just heard, my name is Christopher Sargent. I'm an assistant professor in property law at the School of Law of the University of Nottingham. And around about 15 years ago, I was sat exactly where you're sat now, thinking about what I wanted to study as part of my higher education and where I wanted to study it. And I spent the next 4 years, 2007 to 2011, studying law with Australian law at the University of Nottingham. And today I'm going to spend around about 20 minutes talking to you about two key questions. First of all, what is law? What's it all about? And secondly, why should you study law? And then hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for questions. I'm going to talk really at a fairly sort of general level, things that will apply across all law courses, certainly most UK English and Welsh law courses. But I will draw on more specific examples from my own institution and my own experiences as we go through. So to start out then, not so much with what law is, but really what law isn't, or at least what law is not only. And this really begins from probably a misconception that I had when I started my own law degree, so back in 2007. And that is that law is not just about knowing legal rules. When I started my law degree, I believed that essentially what a law degree was being able to find the relevant legal rule in a big book that had the law in it, and all you had to do was sort of find the relevant section of the book, and that would tell you the answer. Of course, any law degree, wherever you go, will involve learning legal rules and legal processes. That's an inevitable part of doing a law degree. And that's an interesting, intellectually stimulating experience in its own right. But as we'll talk about over the next sort of 15, 20 minutes or so, what law is and why you should study law is so much more. And we'll cover a number of different areas, issues that will hopefully help to elucidate to you what a law degree is and why you might want to study. And the first thing to say is that law is not just some sort of fixed set of rules on a page in a book, but rather it's a living, breathing ecosystem that, first of all, is constantly changing. Every day, Parliament, the legislative body, the courts, the executive, the government, international bodies are constantly making new rules and changing old rules. And so every day in the Singaporean Parliament, in the UK Parliament, in the courts, new rules will be made, old rules will be got rid of or changed or amended. Linked to that is that these rules are not always consistent. So both internally, where old laws and new laws might clash with each other, but also externally with different bodies, different groups around the world, where they don't always agree. You might have a clash between a local law, a national law, and an international law. And what do you do in those sorts of circumstances? Even when the rules on paper say the same, they're not always interpreted in the same way. So different bodies, different judges, different parliamentarians might interpret rules in a different way. So just knowing what the rule says on its face is not always enough to help you to understand what the rule means, how it's going to work in practice. And that's particularly true because lots of rules are not actually always written down, and particularly in a common law system like England and Wales, lots of laws, say, are developed by judges. They're not written down on paper, they're decided in cases, they're discovered or explained. Even in some cases, constitutional rules. So the UK, unlike some other countries, does not have a codified constitution. Parts of it are written down, but it's not in a single document. So trying to work out what those rules are and how they work, again, is not always easy. And of course, most importantly, is how do these rules actually apply in a given case? So we have the rule, how does it work for your client in your case? And again, that's not easy. It doesn't tell you the answer to that anywhere. You have to apply the rules in practice. And studying law is not just about knowing what the law is today, is now, but often also about knowing what the law was in the past. So studying law, yes, you will also study some legal history. And many...
So sorry for interrupting. Just wondering if you have any slides for to share or...
so not today. I'm just going to speak to the crowd.
All right. Thank you so much. Just checking. Thank you. So sorry for that.
That's right. So lots of courses, you will not just study what the law is today, but also what the law was in the past. To understand in its own right, but also to think about how the law became what it was. What's its context? What's its history? And you can see this if you look at things like, for example, land law or property law, which I teach on. How did the law develop? Well, it's a construct. It develops from the social context in which the law exists. And not just what the law is in the past, but also what the law will be in the future. And so in order to understand, say, where the law is going, you might wish to think about, say, where the law has been, where the law is today. Every day, the law is changing and developing. Only yesterday, Parliament announced in the UK they're passing laws around economic sanctions on Russia. And so, say, the law develops, the law changes every day. Even when you think you understand what's going on, the rules can suddenly change quite dramatically. And it's not just law in one area, but it's law in a whole range of areas. Most law degrees in England and Wales will have 7 core modules, 7 courses that you have to do. And then there are lots of other optional modules. So I teach on 2 core modules, the land law and the trust law course. But there are lots of other areas that you might be interested in, both national law, so contract law or criminal law or constitutional law. There's international law, both regional, so European Union law, ASEAN law, European Convention on Human Rights, but also sort of pan-international law, so international space law or international treaty law, or private law, conflict of laws. What do you do if there's 2 countries that have a piece of law on a subject and it doesn't agree? Or if you have a shipping contract that's signed in Singapore using an English ship and a French crew, what law applies on that ship? And so you're studying the law in a certain jurisdiction, but you will also study law in other jurisdictions. And we've touched on a number of these things, say both law within an individual country, but even there you might have regional law, you might have religious law, and they might clash. You might have regional European Union law, ASEAN law, international law, conflict of laws, and they don't always agree with each other. And so trying to work out what law applies in what situation, what do you do if there's a conflict, is a really challenging situation. And it's not just about law in a courtroom. Often in many of these cases, the courtroom section is the most sort of high profile example of the law, but it's also about studying law in the real world, whether that's some sort of internship placement module, like we have in Nottingham, whether it's through a year abroad program, and we might talk about that later, whether it's through student societies, giving our students active chances to go out into the community. Because the law exists, yes, in the courtroom, but it also exists on a daily basis. So it exists when the police make decisions, when state officials make decisions. It exists out on the battlefield It exists in businesses who have to decide which people to employ. It exists, say, when landlords make decisions about who's allowed to live where. It exists in families. Are you allowed to keep your children? Or how does divorce work? Law exists everywhere. And it's also important when you're thinking about law to think about who it is that's involved in this process. Who are the lawmakers? Who are the judges? Who is exercising discretion when the police decide who's going to get charged with an offence? Who are they? What discretion are they exercising, and how are they exercising it? And studying law is not just about what the law was, is, and will be. Studying law is about what the law should be. Is the current law right? Should the law be different? Could we make the law better? What policy goals is the law trying to achieve? And are they the right ones? Could they be better balanced? Who is advantaged or disadvantaged by the current legal system? So have we got the balance right? And even, is the law at all the right tool to use? Do we need a law on this situation? Or actually, can we use guidance or trust people to use their own common sense? And so that will force you, and it should force you, to think about the context in which the law operates. And that reflects one of the most important things I want to say today about what law is and why you should study it. And that's that law is about real people, and it's about real lives. And it's about whether somebody can keep hold of their children, or whether somebody is going to prison, or whether somebody's business is going to go bankrupt and all their employees will lose their job and they might lose their house. These are real people with real lives. And that's not just the clients that one day you will represent in the future. And that's the students that you study with in your class. So we have about 340 odd in a year group at Nottingham. It's the staff members that you study with. It's the places that you go and the people you meet while you're there, whether that's, say, studying at an institution or studying abroad as part of your degree, or being involved in one of the many student societies that many of our students are involved in. It's the workplace, your colleagues, the people you work with. It's your friends and family who have to deal with the things you're working with when you come home. So law is about real people. And it's about real lives, and it will involve you not just thinking about law, but about history and philosophy and science and maths and so many other subjects all rolled into one. Many of you, when you study law, you'll be studying law first and foremost because you want to be a lawyer. And of course, that's what most of our students will go on to do. They'll want to be lawyers, whether that's for you back in Singapore or Malaysia, or whether it's over here in the UK. And studying a law degree will obviously give you many of the skills that you need. You will acquire legal knowledge. You will know what to do with that, how to use it. And that's because one of the most important, perhaps the single most important thing you will get from a law degree is what we call learning to think like a lawyer. Wherever you study your law degree, whatever topic areas you study, you will never learn all the law, not least because, one, you don't have time, and two, as we've touched on, the law is constantly changing and developing. So what you're really learning is this sort of transferable skill set that you can take away, that you can use to be a lawyer. Now, clearly, this is incredibly important if you actually want to be a lawyer, but it's also a broader skill set you can take away, even if you don't want to be a lawyer. So whether you know you want to be a lawyer, whether you're thinking about it, not sure, or whether you know already that you don't want to be a lawyer, doing a law degree is a hugely impressive degree. Studying law, a hugely impressive skill set that you will take away for an employer. And if you think about the sorts of things that you will be doing on a law degree, they will give you, say, a really useful transferable skill set. You will be able to look at complex factual situations to work out what the important facts are, what the important elements of the case are. You'll identify the relevant rules, the relevant legal rules and the relevant cases that discuss them, and construct a legal argument. Construct an argument that says, yes, this is what I advise you do in this situation. And then you have to explain that argument. And you're often explaining it to people who don't like lawyers, don't trust lawyers, think that you're trying to rip them off, and get them to do what you think is best. Right? Explain to them, this is what my advice is, I think you should do this. And so those are skills which, whatever professional job you want to go in, will be a hugely useful skill set. Pretty much every professional job will involve dealing with lots of complex information, bringing it down to a manageable size, explaining to people, say, what you think they should be doing or not, and thinking about how you're going to move that scenario forward. How are you going to persuade somebody this is the right course of action? All in all, then, say there are many reasons to do a law degree, but I just want to bring you back to the penultimate point that I just made. Studying law, yes, it's about looking at books. Yes, it's about learning legal rules, but studying law is about real people in the real world. It's about finding out, can this person keep their kids? Is this person going to jail? Is this person getting sued? Can this person recover damages towards the cost of their life-changing injury, rather? When this person goes to work and gets sacked by their employer, can their employer do that? When you go back to your house or to your apartment tonight and something doesn't work, can you make the landlord come and sort it out? And these are big, really important, life-changing questions for people all around the world. And studying law, studying a law degree, is a really fascinating, insightful, intellectually stimulating, challenging way of engaging with real-world issues. So people around you, the people you see every day, they all have legal issues. If you turn on the news today, yesterday, there's all sorts of legal issues, ranging from the very big, if you look at the situation in Russia and the Ukraine at the moment, down to, in some ways, very small. But there's still things which matter to individual people. So whether you can get your shower fixed by your landlord when you go home is not an international legal issue, but it is hugely important to you, to your family, to the people around you. So I've studied law now. I joined the University of Nottingham as a student back in 2007. Obviously, I'm not trying to do a sort of party political broadcast. I think it's the best institution, but I've tried to sort of stay fairly general today. Quite happy to take more specific questions in the chat shortly. I've not regretted studying law in the 15 years. It's not been easy. Often you're being asked to look at very challenging, difficult, often sad situations, both at the national, the local, the international, the regional level. But I've not regretted that decision. In many ways, I find it's opened my mind to really what's going on in the world, because you're not just studying law, you are studying history and international affairs and politics, maths, science, physics, all these sorts of things can all come into one. And to finish, I would simply say I haven't regretted studying law for a minute. I would encourage you all, wherever you go, whatever you do, whether it's as part of a law degree or just more generally, to study legal issues, to find out what's happening with the law, how it's making a difference to people's lives, for better or for worse. Good luck and enjoy your legal studies. And with that, I shall hand back. And I think we're gonna open the floor to questions. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Christopher, for the insightful sharing. So yeah, we'll open the floor to questions. Students, so if you have any questions, you can leave it in the Q&A chat box or the normal chat box as well, so that Mr. Christopher Sargent can address your questions. Okay, just give them a few minutes.
Anything at all that anybody wants to ask? if we stun them into silence.
You can just leave the questions in your chat box, students, if you have any at all. Anything to clarify? Yeah, we do have some time, so.
Whether it's about law in general or law specifically at my institution, or quite happy with anything at all. All quiet so far.
Okay, if there really isn't any,
Here we go.
I think, yeah, you can actually proceed to the lounge room if any further questions later on for Mr. Christopher. Oh, there's one here. For Singapore,
go on.
For Singapore students, what are the entry requirements, A levels, and the total fee for the entire course from Jaya?
So A-level entry is 3As, and costs will be, so the standard law degree is 3 years, and so 3 years of international fee. You can extend to a 4-year course and do a year abroad as part of your degree, which is one of the programs that I run. So you do years 1, 2, and 4 in Nottingham in the normal way, and then spend year 3 on exchange at one of our partner universities around the world.
Okay. Is there a particular test that students need to take before applying for a law degree in the UK?
So as a general rule, no. Some institutions, including Nottingham, will ask you to do the LNAT, so the Law National Admissions Test. Importantly, I don't want to go into great detail about it today. I can talk about it at greater length if people want. It's not a test of legal knowledge. It's a test of skills that we think are useful at predicting your ability to succeed on a law degree. So it's split into 2 parts. Part A is essentially reading comprehension, multiple choice questions. And part B is a short essay section. You get 3 choices. Choose one. But I say importantly, it's not about questions of law, because you haven't studied law, so it wouldn't be fair for us to ask you about law you haven't studied yet. So yes, for some institutions.
Okay. He's also asking, what is the minimum score requirement for the test?
So for LNAT, so there's 2 parts. So part A is out of 42. So there's usually about 13 pieces of text with 3 or 4 questions on each. There isn't a minimum score as such, but obviously it's one of the factors that we take into account when we're deciding who to make offers to. Usually a score above about 50% is a good score. So anything sort of mid-20s upwards is pretty reasonable. It's not designed to be impossibly difficult, because if you all got 0, that would tell us nothing. But it's also evidently not designed to be sort of impossibly easy, because it's designed to give us extra information to make the admissions decision.
There's one here that is asking if he did not meet the grade, is there a foundation program that he can
so yes, there is, run through Kaplan, which I don't have any information on me today about, but there is. So we can dig that information out and send it across.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any more questions, students? If not, we will wrap up. Another few seconds.